All right. It's 1:02 p.m. I'm calling the March 18th, 2024 meeting of the Albemarle County Architectural Review Board to order. Could you call a roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Mr. Vanderwerf,
Here.
Mr. Stoner,
Here.
Mr. Hancock,
Here.
Mr. Henningsen.
Here.
I'll wait
Oh,
1 minute for Mr. Matsuno. As he runs in. Mr. Matsuno.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting. The public may access and participate in the meeting electronically. Instructions for doing so are posted on the Albemarle County website at the Albemarle County calendar. The public has real-time audiovisual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone. Both is provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the county's website. This meeting is a public record and subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. All speakers, when it is your turn to speak, please first state your name for the record. Applicants who are making presentations, note that your presentation is limited to a total of 15 minutes, which you can divide among your team members. Staff will let us know when the 15 minutes are up. If applicants in the meeting room have team members attending virtually who will need to present, please make that known when you come to the podium. Everyone who is participating virtually, please mute your microphone until it is your turn to speak. Do any ARB members have anything to disclose?
No.
All right, I have a disclosure that if we are still in session at 2:40, I will have to head out and I will hand things over to Frank.
Chris, actually, I have a similar commitment at that time. So
All right,
seeing as everybody's here.
great. Yeah, so hopefully we'll be done before then anyway. So are there any members of the public that want to make a comment about a project that is not on the agenda for review?
No.
All right, great. All right, there is one consent agenda item today. It's ARB 2024-08, Old Ivy Residences. Do any ARB members want to move the Old Dominion Village application off the consent agenda for discussion?
No.
All right. In that case, does anyone move to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we could,
Mr. Henningsen,
aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner.
Aye.
Mr. Matsuno,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. We have 3 regular review items today. The first is ARB 2024-05, North Point Wendy's initial site plan. Chris, do you have a presentation ready?
Yes.
Thanks.
Application being reviewed today is the initial site plan to construct a Wendy's restaurant with drive-through windows and pickup windows in addition to associated site improvements. Site is located along Route 29 at the intersection with Northside Drive and is part of the larger North Point development. ARB reviewed the sign in the median Northside Drive and the flanking entrance walls in 2020, but has not reviewed any proposals for the site. Architectural, landscaping, and lighting plans were not provided with the initial site plan. Regarding the architecture, it is expected that design will be trademarked in nature and will likely need modifications to meet entrance corridor guidelines. Regarding the layout of the site, the building is oriented towards the entrance corridor, but it's regulated by parking, or regulated from 29 by parking in a travel lane. Additionally, the building footprint shows a pickup window on the facade of the building. This arrangement is expected to result in a visual emphasis on service parking and paved areas as viewed from the entrance corridor. Staff recommends revising the site layout to relegate parking from the entrance corridor and provide architectural designs that present a fully integrated facade to the entrance corridor. Regarding the landscaping on the site, the planting area along the northern perimeter of the parking lot does not appear to be able to accommodate the required large trees. No interior trees are shown, and the entrance corridor frontage landscaping will need to be coordinated with the existing entrance wall. Staff recommends that the layout of the site be revised as noted in the staff report prior to initial site plan approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
All right, thanks a lot. We'll just run through and see if anyone has any questions. Dade,
No questions, thanks.
Tara,
No, thank you for your presentation.
Frank,
No, thanks.
Frank?
No, I don't have any questions.
I don't have any questions either. So does the applicant have a presentation?
I am David Mitchell. I'm with the developer. The applicant, the Wendy's franchisee, asked me to come and get any comments that y'all may have and any feedback which you've already given us. And we're going to revise, or they will revise the plans and try to mitigate as best we can a very tight site. I'll just advocate for them a little bit. The location and size of that site is dictated by a VDOT entrance location to match across the street. We obviously don't own any land further north of that. So it's a tight little site, obviously. We do have landscaping walls there. If you drive out there, that particular wall that they noted is between 6 to 10 feet tall. So it obscures the building and some of those parking things. And we can revise the landscaping buffer. We have the buffer. We just may need to move the trees around that are already there to keep that as, you know, mitigated as possible. So I'm just here to say those things, and if you have any comments or any suggestions, we will hear them and try to address them with the next round.
All right, thanks a lot. We'll see if any members have questions for the applicant. Frank Stoner.
I guess the only question for you is the notion of relegated parking in the context of what is essentially a drive-through fast food.
Yeah. Right. What's the point?
Well, I
Cars
guess,
are in
yeah,
the drive aisle.
Some clarity maybe with regard to what we actually mean by that. It looks to me like the parking is behind the face of the building. The start of parking is behind the face of the building. What are standard site plan requirements indicate that it needs to be further behind, or? I guess there are two, it looks like there are two spaces maybe in front of it, but.
Yeah, the staff's question is more on the two parking spaces, or the combination of all, but more emphasis on the two parking spaces in front of the building.
Okay, so if they eliminated those two spaces, would it be essentially conforming?
Yeah, I think that was the main point. That would be a big improvement.
Okay.
Okay. We're up against it on parking spaces too, obviously. So those two that you have I don't know if those are meant as pickup spaces, like pull in, you know, where sometimes they don't have it ready and they come. Yeah, mobile pickup. That's what those blocks are for. So the two right there, is that what you're talking about? Is that what I gathered?
Correct.
Okay. All right. We'll try to come up with something. I'm not sure I'll have to look at the parking counts. I know we're right up against it. They have modified the building smaller already than their standard with the eye toward parking and drive aisles, because the standard, you know, we're trying to deal with the drive-through design standards and you know, entrances, and I understand. We'll try to figure something out.
We were hoping that there was a way to reconfigure maybe the dumpsters and maybe the back portion of the, behind the main portion of the building, to reconfigure it to get additional,
Yeah.
to keep the number of spaces and still move those two, perhaps.
Yeah, the dumpster, I mean, we gotta make sure the truck can get in. Now, they do schedule their deliveries for their dumpsters at night when, obviously not when people are driving around. We can look at that. That might be a way to work it. And I guess the dumpsters would have a dumpster enclosure that would help mitigate their existence at that location, right? All right, okay. And lots of pretty trees and bushes. Got it. Y'all go out there and look at our beautiful wall and armware, by the way. Which I still get a hard time about because it's too expensive. But it's done now. All right, anything else?
All right,
Any other suggestions for me? Yeah.
Dave, do you have any questions?
No, no questions. Thank you.
Frank, any questions?
No questions, but I agree, it is a nice wall, nice entrance feature, and I think
Yeah.
that really helps
You
this.
should see it at night. It's beautiful and lit up
Yeah.
at night.
Tara, do you have any questions?
Just two, so could you just clarify, so the wall is intended to remain,
Oh, yeah.
is that correct? Great.
Yeah.
And then, when you say you're up against it in terms of the parking count, could you just clarify, what the requirement
The
is?
minimum required for the size of the building, that's what, I mean, they've shrunk that building down from their standard. As you can imagine, in-seated eating is not, I mean, the world has changed, right? So, most restaurants don't really, it's not a huge loss for them. It's not a huge issue for them, but it is, just so you know, that is a smaller footprint than their standard building.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks. I don't have any questions.
All right,
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, are there any members of the public that would like to make a comment?
No.
All right. So in that case, the ARB will now go into discussion. Guess we'll start with Frank Hancock.
Sure, I don't have anything to add. I think the staff comments gonna get across the main points and then our conversation we just had with the applicant. And I'll just reiterate, it is super nice entrance feature. Like, kind of went above and beyond on the entrance to the development, so I think that helps this application.
Tara?
I guess the only thing I would say is, just thinking about my experience driving down that site, that even though the face that's sort of abutting the entrance corridor is like, one of the ones we're most concerned with, I feel like the side profile elevation is actually more prominent as you're driving out of town. So just the landscaping there, is appropriate to the prominence of that view. That's all.
All right, thanks. Dave?
Yeah, like Frank would just emphasize the staff report and comments. I think the landscape is key, and I think appreciate staff suggestion of looking at the dumpsters as a way to adjust the parking. And
All right, Frank?
I don't have anything to add. Yeah, I think these guys have covered it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think I don't really have anything to add either, so guess if we could take a look at the recommended motion. If anybody has any tweaks or changes they'd like to make.
I don't.
No.
All right, in that case, anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move to forward the recommendations outlined in the staff report to the agent for the site review committee, with the conditions listed in the staff report. No amendments.
I'll second.
All right, thanks. If we could put it to a vote.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Mitsuno,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Our next regular review item is ARB 2024-09, Home Depot final site plan. Margaret?
This is a review of the proposed Home Depot store. We've reviewed this project previously on a number of occasions. You've looked at it as a special use permit request, a revised special use permit request, an initial site plan, a preliminary architectural review, and a minor amendment related to the demolition of the Sears building. This is the final site plan that you're reviewing today. The staff report for today's review was formatted to include comments from a number of those earlier reviews to make sure we were tracking everything and all the comments that you'd made along the way. Because you've seen this so many times, I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing the overall project. I'm just going to focus on the primary issues that were identified in this round of review. Of course, if you have any questions or want to see anything else, we can certainly address that. One of the comments from the September meeting of last year was to revise the design, the building design, to increase coordination, to establish human scale, and to reduce blankness. The staff report focused on two items at that time. One was coordinating the lumber canopy with the main entrance feature. And the main entrance steps at the top of the elevation, at the corners at the top of that feature, the lumber canopy did not. So the request was to try to make those more similar to each other, or make the lumber canopy more similar to the main entrance. And that change was not made in this round of drawings. The second item regarding scale was the beam over the main entrance. The staff report at that time noted that increasing its depth could add visual interest in human scale. And that's seen in the image of the store in the upper left of this slide. It's just an image taken from the internet. Again, that change was not made in the current round of drawings. The third item for this round of review is regarding the fencing at the garden center. The fencing appears in the elevation drawings, but not on the site plan. The location of the fencing isn't shown. There are no fence details in the plan. It is standard to have those details in the site plan, and they're needed to show conformity with the conditions of the special use permit. There were some other more minor issues noted in the staff report. One is regarding the samples for the new colors. The color palette for the building generally remains the same, but the manufacturer has changed. We have samples for the earlier choices, but not for the current ones. There are also a few minor revisions needed regarding landscaping for consistency with the approved plant list and with coordination with the trees to be removed. We also noted a few changes to the lighting plans that are needed for consistency with the guidelines, and also the lighting plans need to be incorporated into the final site plan set. So our recommendation is for approval with the changes that are listed in the staff report.
All right, thanks a lot. Tara, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thanks, Margaret.
Frank Hancock,
No, thank you, Margaret.
Wade,
Thank you, Margaret. No.
Frank?
No, thanks.
I don't have any questions either. Thank you. Does the applicant have a presentation?
Good afternoon. I'm Valerie Long with Williams Mullen, representing the applicant Home Depot. We do have a brief presentation, and I want to just make sure you know the members of our project team who are here. John Karakis with Greenberg Farrow Architects, Dan Boyle with MG2 Architects, my colleague Megan Nadastup, our land use planner, and participating remotely is David Ellington with Kemley Horn Civil Engineers. First, let me start from the beginning. There was a little bit of confusion with our internal design team and the Home Depot construction team. Everybody's working frantically together, and we did not coordinate as well as we intended on the two changes Margaret mentioned, which I think were perhaps the two most important for today. Those changes were supposed to have been incorporated, but did not quite make it in due to, again, some internal confusion. So we do have some images showing what that could look like. If you want to see those, we have them ready. If you want to give us some feedback, our plan would be to resubmit with those for sure. If you all were comfortable approving them as we show you today, that would be great, but we realize you may need time to review them a little bit more. All the other changes are already being incorporated into the final site plan application. Here is the site plan and we wanted to highlight the new trees. Those that are in bold green are the new ones that are proposed, I believe, since we were last here. Wanted to in particular call out You all asked that there be greater variety and a little bit more staggering of these trees along Rio. We added these trees here, 8 trees, to help essentially break up the direct line of sight that is that one would see turning into the mall from Rio Road. We added more trees here to provide additional shading of the sidewalk that is adjacent and to get closer to the design guideline requirements. We added 2 here across the street, 2 here, and we have received preliminary approval from VDOT to add those trees to the frontage. We are working to pin that down with more certainty, but we do believe and expect that we will be able to do that as shown. The one change we wanted to point out is the trees that are slightly lighter green. On the prior plan set, there were 2 trees in each of those islands, and now there's 1. As we understand it, when the landscape architects were calculating the tree canopy initially, they did not realize that they could count existing trees to remain. And so they thought that they needed 2 trees in each of those islands to meet the canopy. But once you factor in existing vegetation to remain, they did not need to. So we're happy to discuss that further if necessary, but I wanted to just be transparent about that. Everything else in the bright green is new. And this sorry, I should have skipped here first. That's the detail of those changes. And a little bit close up showing those. There's 2 here we think will really help from the Route 29 entrance corridor. Again there. And this is the front elevation plans as submitted. As Margaret indicated, the request was to coordinate this area better with here and extend this out. Right now it's shown as 3 feet out. So I'll show you an image in a moment. We did add the trellises that we had discussed here and here. This is a close-up to of the plans as they were submitted. Just obviously the left half of the plan of the building is above and the right half is below. This is a proposed revision. I have a next slide that'll show it a little bit more clearly, but I wanted to have one altogether. Again, we have not submitted these. These are the first time anyone's seeing them other than our team. So, but I just did want to show sort of the effort that was made and the intent. I think we have a slide. Let me get to a slide that shows the changes. So one was we moved the flagpole from it was over here and we moved it from the exit side to the entrance side, which is Home Depot's preference. This, again, originally was proposed at 3 feet extended. The proposal is to extend those out an additional 3 feet. So it would be a 6-foot extension or overhang. Relatively minor change, but one we wanted to point out was this enclosure area, which you may recall is the part of the garden center, outdoors open on this side, was extended to enclose that side a little bit more. And here, again, this was as submitted with no real change. And below is the architect's plan and effort. And we welcome your feedback if you're comfortable providing it, showing how they attempted to make it not exactly the same as the main entrance, but to break it up and provide some different heights and variations and make it look more coordinated and add depth. Also a relatively minor change, but originally the bollards that would protect the propane tank cages were in this location, but with the addition of the trellises, it needed to be moved. So we show those here now. So just for clarification, these portions were made less wide and the middle one was made more wide. This line is not really, it's not 2 columns together. It's just supposed to be slightly wider. And then these lines also really shouldn't be noticeable in that regards where the seams come together. But it was an attempt to break that up and provide more consistency. This is what the changes would look like with regard to the canopy overhang. So originally, again, as submitted and what you have in your packet is at 3 feet. This is what it would look like raised or extended to 6 feet. And you can see the trellis in the foreground. This is with the image, obviously, you're rendering with the existing landscaping. Again, the trellises are there, but the extension that is proposed of this So this shows it at 3 feet and not 6. So that would look better from if it were correctly shown. And then here's with the proposed landscaping, but not those 8 trees that we showed you along the entrance. So we'll be updating this as well to show that those trees were added somewhat at the last minute. And those are that's everything we have. So I'd be happy to go back to perhaps this slide. If there's any questions at any point, we're happy to answer questions as well.
All right, thanks a lot. I guess we'll start with Dade, if you have any questions for the applicant.
Sure, yeah, thank you for the exploration of the adjustments to the canopy. I guess a question is, how deep is the sidewalk at the primary entrance or the distance to the travel or fire lane?
We'll have to look it up and come
Sure
back to you.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Either Megan or maybe David Ellington listening can look it up for us.
Yeah. Happy to stand by and turn
Thank
it over
you.
to others.
All right, Frank Stoner.
Can you go back to the front entrance,
Sure. You mean the main entrance here?
main entrance? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you can go back to the. I
Okay.
was just curious to see the material behind the lumber sign in the upper rendering appears to be different than the siding itself. And then in the lower one, it looks like it's the same material throughout. Do you know what the material is in the upper?
Let me ask one of the architects to come up and explain.
Okay.
Can you come? Can you come up?
What's going on? Dan Brawl from MG2 Architecture. Can you repeat the question?
Question is, in the upper rendering, the material behind the lumber sign appears to be different than the siding above it. In the lower one, it appears to be the same material all the way down. Is that?
So this is just a graphical difference. Yes, they are the same material, both in the as submitted and in the proposed. This is just a graphical difference in the shading shown because the top one has shadows casting down, and I believe that's what you're seeing.
I see. So no change in material. Okay.
Correct.
That's all I had.
All right, thanks. Tara?
This is just to clarify, so all of the changes that were proposed in the staff report are captured in these set of drawings, but they haven't been properly coordinated in the final submission. Do I have that right?
There's probably a few that still haven't been entirely, but the intent is to incorporate all of them with the final submittal.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Frank?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I don't have any questions either. Do we have an answer for Dade's question about?
We do
spot?
15 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who would like to make a comment? All right, seems like there are not. So the ARB will go into discussion. I guess we'll start with Frank Stoner.
I don't have any questions or comments, really. I think they've addressed the vast majority of the concerns we had last time. I'm not sure I have a preference between the lumber entrance as it's currently rendered and the original. So I could go either way on that. But otherwise,
All right, thanks. Dade?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the greater depth in the canopy. I think given the scale of the facade and the building, I appreciate doubling it. I think it could be significantly deeper still and make a more generous entry. I should have thought to ask, there was the example shown of the store with the columns, which I do think helps to break up some of the blankness that still exists in that center element, even with the greater depth of the canopy. If the applicant were willing to do that and other members thought that would be an improvement, I think, at least personally for me, it would be. And then I appreciate the study of the lumber canopy. I think it seems slightly improved. So I don't know what others think.
All right, thank you. Frank Hancock?
Sure. I appreciate the applicant's willingness to make these updates and present these revisions today. I don't see anything that I think needs further study. I agree with with Frank Stoner that the lumber entrance could go either way. And I do appreciate the extended main entrance canopy. I think that helps. I feel like this application has been very thoroughly reviewed. So I don't have anything else to add.
All right, thanks. Tara?
Same here. I appreciate the applicant's thorough application at this point and presentation of the revisions. I think the only thing that I would want to talk about is the way to proceed so that all of these elements get incorporated in a, final submission. I think it sounds like a lot of us are pretty comfortable with what's been shown. So just in terms of process, how we can move to keep things moving and also ensure that all of the relevant comments and issues are resolved eventually.
I think what we would need from you today is a direction on the lumber canopy. And I think at this point, the applicant will resubmit revised drawings. And I think as staff, we're comfortable reviewing it. I don't think it would need to return to you.
All right, thanks. I guess that's my feeling as far as the lumber canopy. I could go either way. I think the most recent version is a slight improvement. I guess we could just kind of come to a consensus on whether we prefer, option A or option B. And then I'm comfortable with kind of a tentative approval with staff kind of following up on that. Guess I could go either way on the canopy also, but have a slight preference for the latest version.
I think the lumber canopy as updated makes sense. Continuous.
Yeah. That generally.
I agree.
And do we want to address Dave's comment on the depth of the entrance canopy? Whether 6 feet is the right amount versus 8 and columns? Just so that we have. I agree that, 8 would probably be better than 6. 6 is better than 3.
10 would be even better.
Yeah.
There's probably a point where it's not. Maybe at 15, you're starting to push it, but whether that's something that the applicant would be open to, or whether it's something that the board would be interested in moving forward with.
I guess personally, I feel like kind of doubling the extension from 3 to 6 like satisfies that comment. I mean, if they did want to make it more, that would be great. But I do think the 6 foot overhang, addresses the concern that was originally put forth. So I'm satisfied with that personally, but.
I am as well. I think the visual impact from the entrance corridor, which is really our focus, is unaffected by 3 versus a 6 or a 6 versus a 10. I think it's a nice feature for people coming out if it's raining, but that's not an architectural issue.
I agree. I'm okay with the 6.
All right. So I guess we could take a look at the motion.
So I guess item 1 would be incorporate the lumber canopy shown at the meeting.
I think.
For number three, we talked about the increased depth of the canopy. I don't know if that's what was intended by beam.
Yeah, technically the depth of the beam is remain the same, but the canopy is steeper.
Strike three and add the same language from one.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last
Yeah,
comment.
just add the revised design, I guess. And should beam be canopy? Is that what was intended by the comment, or was it intended
think
to be
that's
the
what it
vertical
is.
height of the beam?
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Is that,
What is the beam?
Beam was
like,
the
was it the
fascia
depth of the
canopy,
overhang or the
effectively.
actual, kind of like vertical depth of that beam? Okay,
The
so,
canopy.
yeah,
Sorry, we're all just commenting, we're just picking on that phrasing because it has a, it's good.
Yeah.
That's great.
hey, does anybody have any other items from that list that need further discussion or modification?
No.
No. So I'd like to move to approve the final site plan with the conditions listed in the staff report amended as follows to indicate that on number one, the revised design shown in the meeting is acceptable to the ARB, to change the word beam in item number 3 to canopy, and to add that the 6-foot depth shown in the meeting is acceptable to the ARB.
Second.
All right, thanks. If we could call a vote.
Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Mitsuno,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, so our last regular review item is ARB 2024 Rio Point Final Site Plan.
I'm ready
Okay.
now. Hold on 1 second, technical difficulties. Okay. Now I'm ready. The application you're reviewing now is a proposal to construct 328 multifamily units in apartment buildings in addition to associated site improvements. This review represents the second review of the site plan and architecture. This site's located along John Warner Parkway near the intersection with East Ridle Road. Changes to address ARB comments have been made to both the site and architecture since the previous review. The changes to the elevations of the two apartment buildings along the entrance corridor include changes to layout of the porch bays and changes in material height. These changes help break up the uniformity of the central bays and better establish rhythm. Regarding the landscaping of the site, trees have been added along the perimeters of the trailhead parking lot in buildings 3 and 4. In the recreational field lot, tree calipers have been increased to 2.5 inches and some additional trees have been added. However, the elevations and renderings show additional landscaping near the building's mechanical units that is not reflected on the landscape plan. Regarding site layout, a 10-foot retaining wall is shown between buildings 1 and 2. Based on entrance corridor guidelines, walls over 10 feet visible from the entrance corridor should be stepped and landscaped. Shrubs that have a mature height between 6 and 20 feet have been added along the sidewalk near the base of this wall. But if maintained at a mature height, they may create an uncomfortable environment for pedestrians. Staff offers the following points for discussion and recommends approval of final site plan with the changes listed in the staff report, including ARB approval revisions to address the retaining wall between buildings 1 and 2. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks a lot. I guess Frank Hancock, do you have any questions?
I don't. Thanks, Chris.
Tara,
No, thank you.
Dave?
Yeah, I guess I think we reviewed this site and this project a number of times, and I may be recalling maybe a previous iteration. I seem to recall at one point there were buildings proposed that had gables and maybe more broken roof forms on their length, but that's a prior application.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
that was application before the requested referral and contacted a new architectural company.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Frank?
I don't have any questions. I will note in sort of reviewing the elevation renderings, there appeared to be a discrepancy between what's shown on the sort of plan view and then the perspective renderings. Ground floor color change, I think, shown on,
Yeah,
The
it
renderings,
wasn't
but
noted in
on
the staff
the-
report, but the perspectives hadn't been
yeah.
updated.
Okay.
All right, I don't have any questions. So we'll move on to the applicant's presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Sean Ballin. I am with Timmons Group, and I'm here with our architect, Jonathan Beck, who will talk a little bit more to some of the building elevations, as well as our developers, Joe Reg and Joe Murray. So we'll go through just some of the updates, which thank you, Chris, for running through those. I think the biggest updates within the landscape plan came by the trailhead park, as well as the landscape at the parking area adjacent to that, as well as additional landscape at buildings 3 and 4. One additional thing which was stated in the report was the landscape around the HVAC units, and that's something that we do include that within our enhanced planting. So that's just something we'll need to update. So that you can see that we do have that landscape. Since the October meeting, we've been coordinating often with Parks and Rec. We had a meeting with them and we're on site as well. So the Trailhead Park looks very similar to what we present in October, but the biggest difference is just the addition to the custom pavilions. So we've added a picnic table, ADA picnic table. One of the big concerns from Parks and Rec was the drainage from the pavilion. So we have worked with the architecture and with Parks and Rec to add a gutter system that is collecting more water than needed within the pavilion and dispensing on the back side of the pavilion and down the sloped landscape area. Just a perspective rendering of what that looks like. So we, the colors and just the aesthetic of it blends more in with the architecture as well. The additional element that we're working through is the public art. So that's something that continues to be coordinate with Parks and Rec Department. And again, a lot of our notes within the drawings that we want the landscape to blend in with the public art. So once that gets decided, that'll be updated as well within Parks and Rec realm. And one of the things that was discussed in October, just as a reminder, there is the opportunity to extend the trailhead more into a primitive path. That was one of the parts of reasoning to meet with Parks and Rec on site. In order to make that an ADA accessible path at this point, you would have to take down most of the existing trees, and that's something that we did not want to do. So Parks and Rec is looking into that as a future opportunity to provide a primitive trail. And again, looking at the perspectives, I think the one thing that I was going to mention was to definitely look at the elevations presented by the architects. These are more of a massing study, and just like you said, the apartments within these drawings are not the latest elevations that are provided in the package themselves. So that is the landscape without looking up Rio Point at the trailhead. So you can see the trailhead area up top. Again, these are very similar to the same as what we presented earlier. The landscape has not changed other than some of those additional trees. And then there was just 2 trees at the arrival entrances that VDOT requested to be taken out based on just safety sightlines for vehicular travel. And again, looking at the intersection of John Warren Parkway and Rio Point. I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan to go over some of the elevation updates.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Beck. I'm with Rural Joy, Trammell and Rubio, and we're providing architecture for the project. One of the comments received on the site plan was to add our mechanical units. So you can see where we did add those around each building, and then you can see in the rendered elevations, the landscape that we proposed to screen those units. You can also see for building 100, most of the comments received from our October meeting were for building 100 and 200. And specifically in building 100, you can see the footprint change as we broke up the 3 one-bedrooms that were in the middle. Again, you'll be able to see that more when we get to that building, but I just wanted to point that out here that we did adjust our footprint to meet that comment. There were no comments received for the clubhouse other than just providing materials and colors. So we did add that to each of our slides, the different materials proposed for the building, the different colors, and then we also turned in physical samples for the board to review as well. Moving on to the apartments, there were no changes made to this building specifically, just 2 perspectives to show the different material stacking, the mechanical units, and also how we're screening those units with the landscape. This is building 100, the one that I pointed out where we had changed the footprint. You can see on the bottom our previous submission where we had the 3 one-bedrooms next to each other. And I believe the board requested that there be more projections in the building, and also that we move some of these roof projections in towards the central portion of the building. So we did update our plan to reflect that. This is the front of the building. This is the rear that faces Warner Parkway. And then also for the apartment buildings, we included all of the materials and the different colors proposed. For building C5, we addressed this comment. This was building 200. We addressed this comment by adjusting the materials to break up the long runs of lap siding that could be seen on the first and second level of the building. So we brought down the board and batten that was on the third level and carried that down to the first level. So you can see our previous submission on the bottom and our updated submission on the top. This is the front and then the back, which also faces Warner Parkway. As we made the same change there and just carried that board and batten down. There were no changes made to the rest of the buildings. I'm happy to run through them. The only change that can be seen for these buildings was just again where we added the landscaping to show how we're screening the mechanical units around each of our buildings. So, thank you.
All right, thanks. See if anyone has questions for the applicant, starting with Tara.
Could you go back please to it was right after the site plan prior to the architectural portion of the presentation? Yes, here. I was curious on building 100 versus 200. I just noticed the sort of building element that's the end of the corridor on either side of the building. That on 200, it looks like that element is a little bit proud of the building, whereas on building 100, it's like a white towery thing with 3 windows. Do you know what I'm saying? The
You're
hallway
referring
that cuts through from the front and the back of the building.
the stair tower there.
Yeah, exactly. So in 200, it's proud of the building, but on 100, it's in plane with the building. Is that true?
That's correct. I believe that was just how we kind of based off of how the units in the center interacted with that. So we did project it out slightly further on building 200 than 100. But visually, it is the same element. One just projects out past this 3-bedroom unit. And on 100, it's even, if not slightly recessed from that 3-bedroom unit.
Is there any reason why 100 can't have the same relationship as in 200?
No. That's something we could look at.
And I guess, is there any reason that 200 couldn't be deeper? The reason I'm following this line of questioning is just because there's this thing happening where the adjacent roof
Right.
in
Part
some of them
that-
intersects with that volume, and in others, it has a more consistent
One of the
relationship.
reasons is because on building 100, this unit has the Juliet balcony, so the unit as a whole does not project out as far. And then once you get down to building 200, it does have the balcony that projects out, so it kind of called for us to have to push the stair tower out some more. Let me show you back on the site plan.
I guess just in general, the stair tower reads a lot more cleanly when it projects past the front and it doesn't have this roof that that returns back and dies into that. And if there's no technical reason why that couldn't be achieved in those entrance corridor fronting buildings, seems to me that is a more consistent expression of the stair tower that you've introduced.
So just so I understand, projecting the stair towers on building 100 to match how they project out on building 200.
Yeah, and I think my particular issue is the way that the roof returns back and dies into the stair tower rather than having the stair tower be proud of the building and have those stair towers end at the sides of the stair tower.
Okay. We can,
Those are all my questions.
Dave?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a good observation, Taro. In terms of the site plan and the parking between building 100 and 200, would it be possible to reduce the parking by 2 spaces and pull the retaining wall back? Or are there any other options that you've considered to step the wall in line with the guidelines?
I believe we're right at the limit we need for parking. And due to the site, if we do reduce the parking in this area, there aren't really any good options currently for relocating that parking, which is why we left the parking as it was over there, and in turn left the wall the way it is.
Do you have any other alternatives for stepping the wall or creating more space for the planting at its base?
Can you clarify the comment specific to the landscape in the wall? You were saying like safety as the main.
Or just walls over 6 feet visible from the entrance corridor.
Yeah.
Should be stepped and landscaped.
I think we were thinking it would, somebody walking on that sidewalk might not be comfortable because you've got a 10-foot
Right.
wall. And then if you're going to plant landscaping on the other side of the sidewalk, that's going to screen the wall, you're going to have sort of a tunnel there and it might be a bit odd.
No, it's definitely something for us to think about. And whether it's, layering some of the landscape on the other side, I think might be part of what we can do. It is a sloped area on that side. So instead of creating that tunnel vision effect, like we can think about how the landscape could be more layered. And maybe that'll help with some of a layered landscape might help detract away from that wall as well.
And I guess I don't know the regulations for parking fully. I don't know if, for example, if to the left-hand side of that main aisle going by 100 and 200, if it could be extended, for 2 spaces. Again, these are just ideas, not to prescribe anything, but just with the goal of mitigating the impact of that retaining wall. I guess the other question, this one's probably more architectural, is are there any feasible ways to break the continuous ridge and roof form of buildings 100 and 200?
I believe we were trying to accomplish that just by moving in those balconies to see if we could kind of create some variation just by moving in those.
Right. Yeah, no, and I appreciate the variation at the eave. I guess my question is more the ridge. I think there's a lot of care and attention that's been given to articulating the facade, looking at the buildings as masses from the distance. Their ridges are somewhat prominent and sort of declare the overall scale of the building in a way that the buildings are large in scale, but
Right.
is there anything that can be done to break down the perception of that at the roof form?
We could look into options on how we could break it up. Initially, no, but if that's something that would be required, then we could look into our options for trying to break up that ridge line some.
Well, thank you.
All right, thanks. Frank Stoner.
Can we go back to the site plan? So back to Dave's question regarding the wall. I'm assuming that the sidewalk can't be moved away from the wall because of grades, because it drops off too quickly, or?
Right. Yeah, it drops off pretty quickly right on the other side of the sidewalk there.
So if you moved it out and put a retaining wall on the outside, so you could put the landscaping on the inside, would that in theory be feasible? And I guess second question, which is probably more relevant, is this even visible from the entrance corridor? I'm guessing it's, I don't know if the perspectives would show that, but.
You've got a layered landscape on this side, so you do have, let me go to the main image first before we do that. So you've got existing landscape that's blocking it, and then we're adding additional landscape alongside this stormwater area, and then you'd have addition. I mean, it is higher, so but you've got 3 layers: street trees, then existing landscape, and then additional landscape that we're adding before you get to that. So even in the winter, we have a mix of evergreen and deciduous, but if there's more deciduous, it's still not going to be as noticeable from that side. And that's where I think a layered approach on just the underside might be helpful. But you do have a lot of layers already in there.
Gotcha. Okay. I don't have any other questions. Thanks.
Frank?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I don't have any questions either. So are there any members of the public that want to make a comment? Like there are not. So the ARB will now go into discussion. I guess we'll start with comments from Dade.
So I guess my question's probably alluded to my main concern, which I think not only this project, but others that we see, just as the scale of development increases in the county. I think our guidelines are good in some ways, but I'm reminded of, I think for some of the area development plans, the form-based code, you know, we've described sort of how facades should be articulated relative to building scale. And I think, you know, separate from this application, would just like to register with my colleagues. I think it would be worthwhile for us to develop some standards and guidelines for how to treat overall building massing, including roof form, just because I think there's obviously a lot of care, as I indicated, that the applicant's taken in articulating the facade, but I think it's undone a bit by the large ridge and the large hipped roof. Again, so I don't think I have further comments about the application. I think it just raises for me questions about standards that I think would be useful to have in place for future applications. I think a secondary thing, I appreciate the applicant's note about the layered landscape and how that may mitigate the site wall. I guess a question maybe for staff rather than a comment is, you know, in terms of the existing vegetation to remain, you know, it's clear to me that with the site plans where the planting is noted and species is given, that establishes a clear way to enforce landscape requirements long into the future of a site. Is it as clear about existing plantings to remain, or as those initial existing plantings decline? You know, is there any way to say what needs to be there? Because I agree that buffer and other things will in the beginning mitigate it. I just for not only this site but for others, how will that work into the future? And then lastly, I think there is clearly a vogue for very cool colors in terms of material or paint palettes at the moment. Personally, I don't think that those relate particularly well to the traditional character of colors and materiality in our county. I think they're rather stark and stand out from landscapes in ways that are less traditional and harmonious. Again, sorry, just putting things on the record today, quite apart from the application before us, but so no further comments on it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Frank Stoner?
I think Dave makes a really good point with regard to the roof forms and perhaps thinking about ways we could include some review of those. I long for the days when we had a stone base to these buildings, but I understand cost is prohibitive. Otherwise, I think you make a good point, Margaret, with regard to the sidewalk and the trees on the other side of the sidewalk. That seems like an odd configuration that I think you guys can probably address with a little effort. Otherwise, I'm generally comfortable with the recommendations of staff and conditional site plan approval.
All right, thank you. Frank Hancock?
Yes, I think this project benefits from the generous amount of green space between the buildings and the corridor. And the fact that there's a pocket park kind of at the most prominent part of the site. We're not dealing with a really big building right on the corner. It's kind of notched out, and I feel like the applicant's done a really good job of not only designing the space to be pretty lush and pretty heavily planted, but coordinating with Parks and Rec, thinking about it as an amenity and how it connects to the, bike ped infrastructure along John Warner. So I think that should be commended. I think I agree with Frank Stoner that the retaining wall is not there yet. That's kind of a non-starter as far as our guidelines. So I think some further development of that and maybe creativity on how to address that. I know that's an interesting condition. Or a very detailed visualization to kind of make the case that it won't have the impact we think it will have, but it's interesting thinking, Dave, you bring up a great point about the large volumes of these buildings and the continuous ridge line. It makes me think of, not that this really relates, but kind of the barn forms and the more agrarian elements of our kind of cultural landscape. But I'm trying to think in my head too, like what breaks that up? What are some of those elements that you use to break it up, and how do they look and how they relate to this building type? But it is an interesting architectural question. Yeah, I think similar to the previous application, we've reviewed this site a lot. I feel like this one, the predecessor, we've commented a lot on, and I think seems like we're now down to just kind of the final few comments, but I feel like we're getting pretty close.
Thanks, Tara.
Thanks. On the retaining wall question, I just, given that we've kind of been burned a little bit on the retaining walls recently, I am inclined to, insist that that area be studied in order to make sure that that impact is mitigated, even if, we have some favorable views from the 3D renderings and the extent of existing planting. I have a strong feeling that it will become more visible than those might suggest. The other thing I wanted to comment on was on the elevations for buildings 100 and 200. And I think that this was a comment I had made in a previous round of review. I am having an issue, and I think it goes to the appearance of blankness criteria that we use on units, the 3-bedroom units on the corners. Just given that they're the most prominent parts of the building that are, they project furthest from the face of the building, I think the views that are selected tend to emphasize them. That those don't appear to have the same level of detail that's being provided on the center of the bar. And these are just 4 stacks of units along the main entrance corridor. So in my mind, there's an opportunity to, you could take that corner bedroom and you could project it out a couple feet and create a different element there. You could introduce a bay. You could, go back to some of the Juliet balconies or other tools that have been going on the interior of the bar. And that would help a lot, because in those perspectives, they're pretty prominent units, and they have a vastly different level of detail than what's being provided on the interior. So I feel like I would feel a lot more comfortable with the project if that were addressed in some way or another. Again, whether it's adjusting the footprint of the building, introducing a bay, introducing an element that's present on the interior of the bar, because currently it's pretty prominent, and it's contrasts pretty strongly with the effort that's been going on the center of that building.
Can you clarify that between, because these 2 buildings are different ones as far as, because are you speaking specifically to the 3-bedroom units?
Yeah, those 3-bedroom units and the ones that are on 100 and 200.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you go to the perspectives. And I know they haven't been updated, but they haven't changed substantially. That unit on the corner there, yeah.
Right.
There's just
I
a-
think that's where we went in and I know it's not updated here. That's where we went in and added, that 2x2 window back to add a little something to break up the space between that single and double window. To kind of help mitigate that excess of materials there. We went in and added those smaller windows that go all the way down the building. So that would definitely be visible as well.
Yeah, I saw that. I understand that the other windows would be there, but I still, I don't know that that completely addresses this question of blankness on those units.
Okay.
Other than that, that's all I was, it's the major point I was concerned with. So thank you.
All right, thanks. I think everybody's made pretty good points, and I don't have anything to add really. So if we could take a look at the recommended motion.
So the recommendation was for approval with the comments that were listed in the report, with the comment about the retaining wall to come back to you for review. I've added 12, 13, 14, and 15 based on your conversation. I may not have this exactly right. 12 is revise the projection of the stair towers on building 100 to match those on building 200. Consider 13, consider breaking up the continuous ridge of the roofs on buildings 100 and 200. 14, add notes to the plan to further describe the contents of the wooded area to remain to ensure continuity of character into the future. And 15, revise the elevations of buildings 100 and 200 to address the blankness of the walls at the 3-bedroom units. I think most of 1 through 10 are really technical issues, just making coordinating things that are needed for coordination.
All right, I guess we'll just run down and see if anybody has any tweaks or concerns about any of them. Dave,
Yeah, I don't have any. I appreciate Margaret's translation of the conversation.
Tara,
No, that looks good to me. Thank you.
No, thanks.
all right, I think we're good then. If anybody wants to make a motion.
Staff, it's a question if the board wanted, maybe not.
Do you want to see back any of 12 through 15 in addition to number 11?
That was one. I was thinking, do we need to see number 11 if it satisfies? Is that something that can be done on a staff level?
Sure, we can.
Retaining wall as an element. I don't know. I mean, 12 through 15, a couple of those seem more important than the retaining wall, but
Sure, I think we're just a little uncomfortable with the 10-foot height, and if the height doesn't change, but yeah, I mean, we could do that, and if we aren't sure, we could just bring it back in that case.
it's Dade or Tara for 12 or 13. Or 15.
12 is fairly straightforward to interpret, I think, at a staff level. I think that's
Yeah.
the point. 15 is potentially so, but
13 is just to consider, right?
yeah,
So
right. Unlikely to. Yeah, I think 14 is useful, and like to the extent that describes sort of the number and species of trees over some caliper. But I think that would be a good help. And then yeah, and Tara 15, I think that's a perceptive comment. What do you think? Do you need to see it again?
I don't feel like I feel like I've expressed how I interpret that on to the applicant, but I also want to make sure that staff feels comfortable taking that direction forward to verify that that's been completed, because I understand it can be ambiguous, so I just wanted to see that you all felt comfortable with 15.
I think so. I think it could be a good item, if not brought back to as other business.
Yeah, I think it's important for the building to address that, but I also am sensitive to the time constraints that bringing this project back before us would introduce. So I feel comfortable moving forward if you are.
All right, great. So in that case, does anybody want to move to?
I'll move to approve final site plan, with the conditions listed in the staff report amended as follows, which is, includes the addition of 12 through 15.
I'll second.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Mitsuno,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, and we have one work session today. It is for the entrance corridor design guidelines addenda for Route 20 South.
Technical difficulties, just a second. Okay, sorry about that. Today we have a draft of the Route 20 South Scottsville Road addenda for your review. I'm presenting this for Mariah, and I should have mentioned that earlier, for the consent agenda item. Mariah has put this together for us and she would love to be presenting it to you, but she'd rather be on vacation in Italy. So I'm here to do it for her. Previously, you reviewed the addenda for Route 20 North, including the history of that roadway. We don't have separate history for 20 South, so it's all combined on this sheet with the overall map. 20 South has been divided into 3 segments. The overall road is named Constitution Route. We've used that name for the northernmost segment here. The middle segment we've named Watercourses, and the southern segment Fields and Forests. The general characteristics and zoning page has been updated to add in those items for 20 South. As you probably realize, zoning along that corridor is mostly rural areas. There is a mix of residential and a little bit of light industrial and neighborhood model zoning north of the Avon Street intersection. Generally, along the corridor, the predominant character is fields and wooded areas. Starting at the southern end of the corridor and working towards the center of the county, as I mentioned, the first segment is fields and forests. The character is rural with wooded borders, hedgerows, and alternating with open views of rolling fields. The segment does include the intersection at Keene, where commercial buildings are very visible, but those very visible buildings are not typical along this segment. This is the precedent image sheet. We did not caption each image because there's just a lot of similarity between the views, but we could add some general captions and sort of group some of those images together if you think that would be better. The middle segment is watercourses. There are several rivers and streams that are run along the road or intersect the road, thus the name. This segment has more dense vegetation along the frontage of the street. So views across open fields are not available as they were in the previous segment. Again, the precedent images sheet and the similarity of the characters along the corridors represented in these images as well. The last segment, again, we use the name Constitution Route for this segment. In the northern segment, the residential development does become more of a focus than in the other areas. There are some residences, groups of residences from about the 1950s, and then we've got views here of some of the much more recent developments. That's all I've got for the day. Navigate back to beginning. Happy to take any comments, suggestions, questions.
All right, well, thanks a lot for the presentation. Frank Hancock, do you have any?
Looks good. I think a lot of similarities to some of the western corridors that we looked at where we focused on the landscape more. It's hard to find some precedent buildings, corridors, but I think it looks good. Tell Mariah she did a good job.
Yeah.
It's vacation.
Tara?
Yeah, I think yeah, I don't know, it's just, it's like daydreaming while I was watching. It's like, oh, it's a great drive. It's a nice part of the county. So I appreciate it being documented, you know, thoroughly and preserving its character. So thank you.
Thanks. Dade?
Yeah, no, continued appreciation for the work and the effort and good presentation and document. Guess it does remind me in terms of the comprehensive plan. I think one of the things we suggested, I can't remember where we suggested fitting in, but was landscape as sort of a resource and a character. And this is certainly a great demonstration of how landscape is such a defining feature of our county. I was reminded too, I guess Route 53 remains not an entrance corridor. Is that right?
It is an entrance corridor.
It is now again. Okay, great.
All right, thanks. Frank?
I'm just wondering, are there any places along this section of the corridor, the southern portion that you could actually build a commercial building? Because we can't review residential, right? Single family. Just trying to, yeah. Highway commercial. That's already built, right? Unlikely we would ever have to review an application in this corridor, in this section of the corridor anyway.
Revisions to the existing commercial properties, for example, had that one there be reviewed. There have been renovations to the buildings at the intersection there at Keene. So those would come forward, and then not in the southernmost, I think it's in the middle segment, the Vintage Market. I think right in the middle of that.
Yeah.
It's something with a special use permit,
Possibly.
like a solar farm or a cell tower.
No, look, I think it looks great.
Just so I can imagine, could you go back to the map showing all three segments of the corridor? You. And then to the zoning map.
And in terms of like the housing developments and things further north on 20, are those things that have been rezoned from rural area or they were defined some time ago in terms of their development more. It's the other thing we might see is rezonings.
Yeah, I think some of those were rezonings. I think Galaxy Farm maybe started out as that and
Yeah.
Green Hill Village.
Yeah.
Plan. Ends the gross area. Yeah.
All right, well, very well done.
Yeah.
And thank you for that presentation. I guess if there are no other comments, we'll move on to other business. First of which is approval of the February 19th, 2024 minutes.
I'll move to approve them.
Second.
Thank you. If we could put that to a vote.
Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Matsuno,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right, other items. Does staff or any board members have any other items to discuss? All right, in that case, we'll move to the next meeting. Next ARB meeting is scheduled for April 1st, 2024. As much as I hate to miss a meeting 2 months in a row, that's county
break.
schools spring
Yeah.
break.
Yes.
And I probably will not be able to attend that one, so.
Similarly, probably will be unable. I don't know, Frank, will you be unable as well?
I'm tentative. It's also my birthday.
Oh.
Well, you'll definitely want to be here.
Probably, yeah.
Better birthday.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
April Fool.
I have a jury duty on that day. Oh. So I can't be here either.
How's the agenda looking?
We have two items.
So spring break is that Monday onward.
Pretty much that whole week.
So we couldn't move it to a two, could we move it back? Like, could we move it the week following, or what's the best way to make sure those can happen around then?
We can try to reschedule the meeting if that's your preference.
Or we don't meet and they go mid-April?
Yeah, the two items that are they bumping up against their time limit or?
Gonna look at that right now. They are final site plans. So that gives us a little more wiggle room. What I'd like to do is contact the applicants and see if they're okay with pushing it to the 15th. But just in case it's an issue for anyone, would everyone be available on the 8th?
I think so, yeah.
Or we could do it next week.
I'm sorry, did you say next week?
Yeah.
Except that the staff reports won't be ready for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I should be able to do the 8th. And I guess if folks could confirm as well, the 15th.
I can't do the 8th, but it sounds like there's a quorum.
Okay, we'll contact the applicants and we'll get back to you and let you know what will work.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, in that case, this meeting is adjourned until our next meeting sometime in April 2024. It is 2:31 by my watch, so thanks a lot, everybody.
9 minutes to spare.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.